welcome to the One Life Podcast, where we talk about things from One Life Church, but ultimately things we think can relate to you and your one and only life. I'm one of your co-hosts, Sarah Inman, and I'm joined, as always, by co-host of the One Life Podcast and our lead pastor, Brett Nicholson.
That's right. Thank you for that great introduction, too.
And I remembered to unmute you.
And that's right. I'm surprised you remember it after all the time we've been off.
I know. It's been a while.
It has been a really, really long while. And I feel kind of guilty.
Do you?
It's kind of like I have, I don't post on Instagram much at all. I just don't do that much, and I just have Instagram guilt. Well,
you have guilt about that?
Haven't done a podcast in a long time. Guilt, yes.
Yeah.
I do. I feel guilty for it. I feel like I should be doing it. I don't know why. Yeah. It's not the Bible or anything, but it's just...
Yeah, Instagram is changing anyway.
Good. Okay, so I was ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Everybody's moving to TikTok. That's what I hear.
Oh, no.
Anyway,
okay, yeah.
But yeah, we didn't want to talk about that. But first, we want to celebrate one thing. This is episode 100, Brett.
I know.
Episode 100.
That's amazing.
Of the One Life
100
Podcast.
of these, yeah. And I remember before we did any of them at all. And can we do this? Should we do this?
It was just an idea that kind of got brought up in a meeting one time, and I was like, I really want to try it. Can I try it? And here we are.
There you go. That's right. 100 later.
It's awesome. Yeah. And today we get to celebrate 100 episodes with our friend Kat. Kat, welcome back to the One Life Podcast. You've been here before. You've been on a podcast before.
I have. Yes. Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. And we want to, I guess we should start out talking about where we have been, Brett, why we haven't been on. We didn't get to talk about that.
That would be great. Yeah, that's right.
So
it wasn't just laziness or anything.
No, it wasn't.
Okay, it was partially.
Well, I mean, this is our first episode in 2021. Mm-hmm. Our last episode was before Christmas, and we've been talking about some things on the podcast we want to do, things we want to update, things we want maybe just want to do different. And one of them was starting to go to every other week instead of every week, and mostly because we just want to take that off week, because one thing that I feel like we both have said is we want more time to plan. We want to plan some of these conversations and stories we want to share, and so we want to use that off week to take that same space and plan. And then also we're looking at another option of starting maybe even a second podcast.
Yes, that's true. I kind of go ahead and get that out there.
Yeah.
Because the idea, we did see a benefit, and we can see benefit coming in the future of some series that we just talked about even today. We want the podcast to add value. I mean, the goal is not just so you can listen, especially listen to me talk more, but to add value and deepen subject matter, which we've been able to do in the course of the 100. We've had some really neat episodes where people can kind of get behind the scenes, or we can take a subject from Sunday and just go deeper with it in one form or the other. But the other one we're conceiving of, which was a goal of the original podcast, was to let people know what's happening in the tri-state, because there's a lot of good things that are happening that a lot of people just don't know about. A friend of mine that moved in from out of town several years ago had lived in a lot of different communities. She said this community has the worst self-esteem of any community she'd ever seen. And it's, a lot of it's just because people don't know the good that's actually going on. They may fear the bad. So that's why we're conceiving of a second one that would be devoted to reporting out what's going on around the tri-state, because there's a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah, and we know that we've been getting some great feedback. Thank you for sending in some things on Facebook, and also to the email at podcast@onelifechurch.org, letting us know some of the things that you've liked. And actually, a lot of people have responded well to when we talk about things just from One Life. So we know that's probably our primary audience, but we've always wanted to be able to speak to the community at large, and anybody just listening to the podcast.
Did I hear that? Did I hear what people liked? I don't think you shared that with me.
I might not
Did
have.
You? Okay.
Well, we haven't talked about the podcast in a while. So.
We're talking about it right now.
Yeah.
Sit there for a little bit, Kat, while we're talking about the podcast.
It's totally fun.
But no, we do want to talk to Kat while she's here. That's why she's here today. And Kat, first off, so we do want to talk about kind of a new adventure they're getting ready to start, or has started already and have been a part of really for 8 months now.
Yeah.
But also that new adventure has shifted you away from being on staff here full time at One Life Church, and so we want to start out having people just know a little bit about you. Tell us what your role has been here at One Life Church first, and a little bit about what that means.
Yeah. So I was the director of Next Gen Ministries, which, when you say that, a lot of people are like, well, what does that mean? What is the director of Next Gen Ministries? So my role, I was responsible for all age, birth to college, really, ministries, and just making sure that those ministries were resourced and happening within our church. So,
Birth to college.
Birth to college.
So a little bit of overload on the job description there. Everybody knows that.
Yes.
But that's, at the time, that was what we had available on the budget. And we said,
right.
okay, we've got to have somebody that can cover all of that. And so you were the one that
I did my best.
Made the mistake of signing on the dotted line. Yeah, appreciate that. So,
and so I was thinking about that. So people will ask what are some of the things that maybe had to happen every week, or maybe some of the things that you got to do. The question that I really wanted to ask is what's one thing that people don't know that probably something you had to do almost every week or pretty frequently that maybe people would never think about has to be done.
The first thing that comes to my mind when I think about that recently with good old COVID would be sitting in elementary with these little personal pencil boxes, and I literally Lysoled markers and crayons each week.
Wow.
That was something I did every week, making sure that everything was sanitized. But no, curriculum support, was one of the big things, just making sure that when kids did come in on Sunday, they had all the resources they needed for that week's lesson. So.
Yeah, I've learned a law over the course of just doing church work and things, and this is true, even beyond church stuff. If things ever feel like they're running smoothly and everything's in its place and all the details are taken care of, and you're just participating in it as someone in the audience or whatever, and you go and think, man, that was amazing, that was great. That means that someone back behind the scenes was sweating bullets and stressed, and because someone stressed over those details and got it all done, and it was just kind of served up. You never even noticed. So the more that happens, you can bet on that. And so, Kat, that was a lot of your job.
Yes,
you get stressed so other people don't have to.
That's exactly what it was. Yep.
Yep.
And I have this pretty frequently, especially if I'm talking to someone who maybe isn't a part of a ministry or church, doesn't attend church, or hasn't been to one in a while. And they say, "What do you do?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm communications director for Wildlife Church." "Oh, but what's your job?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm the communications director." "But what do you do throughout the week? You just work on Sunday, right?" And I'm like, "No." So those are things that I think about, in the next gen role. Even Brett and I have no idea all the things that you guys are having to do, or I shouldn't say having to, getting to do each week to be a part of resourcing volunteers. I think that's probably a large part of your role is resourcing volunteers.
Volunteers, right? Parents, One thing that we really strive to do was partner with our parents so that they, had an understanding of what the kiddos were doing each Sunday and how they could, continue those conversations and those lessons at home. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah. And I think back to some of the experiences I remember, your first staff retreat, and just the excitement, right? Of we're all it's okay, it's going to be okay. You feel really excited right now, and you're like, what are you guys talking about? I'm going to feel this way forever. And there is a moment, probably in any job, not just a church staff, but you kind of hit this point where you're like, okay, I need a break. I need to take some time and rest. And I'm sure you had seasons of that, of ups and downs and excitement, but also okay, what am I doing right now? I'm Lysoling markers, but those things we all have to remind ourselves add up to avenues and places where kids can connect with Jesus and seeing that. So
I loved just being obedient and knowing that it was a calling for me, knowing that I was here because I had been called to do His work, and so for me, that was the best part of it.
Tell me how because I know we talked about this a little bit before. Tell me your kind of story of coming to One Life and how all of that, even becoming on staff, how that came about.
Yeah. So I was actually working part-time as the connections director. Is that what it's called?
That's right. Why did I not remember that?
It's your job. You don't know what it's called? You tell me.
Connections.
That's right.
Connections,
yeah. So I was doing that and working full-time. And I loved my job. I loved it. I was an expert. I knew exactly what I was doing. I worked for two just top-notch individuals. I loved it. I loved everything about it. I thought I would be there forever. And I had a conversation with two ladies who, at the same time, thought of me for a position that was open for another nonprofit in town. And whenever that conversation happened, I thought, what are you trying to tell me? I love what I do. I shouldn't go anywhere. But that single conversation led me to start praying what are you calling me to do? Are you calling me away from, what I love the most? And he was. And I landed at One Life. It's funny because I had a conversation with Bob Seymour, and he said, "Why haven't you applied for that?" And I said, "I'm not qualified. I'm not qualified for that position." And, he assured me that I was more than qualified. And so that's kind of where that started. But I knew without a doubt in the course of that time, praying through that full-time ministry is where I was meant to be.
Was there something particularly about that role, the next gen thing, birth to college, which is still kind of comical to me, but is there something particular about that role that just kind of touched your heart in a way that maybe other role that opened up would not necessarily?
Yeah. I love kids. I love students, especially. I definitely have a deep passion for students. I always thought, man, if I had a role model in my life whenever I was a teen that could really mentor me and be there for me, I didn't have that. And so I wanted to be that for others, especially in the teen years, because those are the hardest years. Those are the toughest years. And so I love kids, I love students, but I love people and I love helping people. That's my biggest thing, is really just being able to be in a situation where I can help others.
Yeah, and that's what Kat brought to the job and that's what people sometimes overlook. You spray Lysol on things and organize things, and you're in a lot of meetings to try to process what do these things look like for. Yeah. But it's always driven, and I know the others in Next Gen, it's driven by that desire to maybe even give what you didn't have, or see the deep importance for. I mean, we need to remember that, especially when it comes to student ministry. All of us remember how hard high school years were. We do. But that's the drive. That's what I love. All the organization and the programs or whatever ideas that come out. It's really fundamentally about just trying to provide that mentoring thing that many of us long for but didn't have. And so and Kat lived that out big time. You really did, in kind of a crazy way that leads to your next thing that you're going to be doing. We'll tell you about here in a moment. But just that passion for wanting to help people and kind of be that you maybe didn't have.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of talked a little bit about some of your favorite parts of that role already. Any other things that come to mind? Any stories or any experiences? I talked to a couple people today. I'm like, what are some things that you would celebrate about Kat? And somebody said, when you were on Big Deal, the year you were on Big Deal, how much fun you were and how funny you were, and it seemed like how much fun you had being on it, and that experience in itself. So Big Deal Theater is something that we try to do a couple times a year, and it's kind of a large production specifically for kids and families to come together. We did one virtual this year, but we've usually done them live. But there's an entire cast, there's a script. I mean, it's a full on production, and it's a lot of fun.
It was so much fun, and I had parents and even kids come to me afterwards, and they're like, "We had no idea that you were like that you could be like this." I'm like, "Oh yeah, I can be fun when I want to be." But yeah, Big Deal was a lot of fun. The people that I worked with were amazing. All the Next Gen staff, and then of course Josh and Ryan. We just had some really good times together. So yeah, the people. Yeah. Again, back to the people.
I get that. I understand that. And I guess this is a good time to point out Kat's not leaving One Life.
No.
Just not on staff. But I think that's always one thing. But we want to take an opportunity, obviously, to just talk about some of the other things that you are doing. What are some things within that role that surprised you?
That surprised me?
I think we all come in with here's what I think this is going to be, and you're like, oh, I didn't think that that's something that has to be done, like curriculum support or.
Yeah, curriculum support. Back to that. All the event planning. I was an event planner as well.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's right. Yeah.
All the event planning. That was definitely a surprise. I loved it. I guess. I enjoyed it. Yeah. But it wasn't something that I expected. All of the meetings. I was in meetings a lot.
Yeah,
a whole lot.
Well, yeah. What's funny is people probably criticize that, like, well, you're in meetings all the time. Well, because it takes open communication between people.
Yeah.
That's just what you have to do, because a lot of people have their, are working with this and bouncing ideas off one another, and you need others to support. You don't just kind of ride solo. And so,
they were helpful.
I've been made fun of for how many meetings I'm in, because I spend a lot of my time in meetings, but you got to get together with others just to talk through, okay, what are we going to do? Where are we going to go? And all that sort of stuff. But that's, it probably was a surprising amount of how that works.
Definitely.
I was thinking, you're talking about people and the things you guys were able to do. I remember, in Henderson, you and a team of people came up with the idea for Wednesday night students. That was something that was started that now happens at every One Life campus. And really, you guys tested it out. See if kids wanted it. Obviously, they did. They wanted a place to belong. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Just trying to figure that out. We actually had a full student band in the beginning, and so that was fun to get those kids together, and it was a lot of trial and error, a lot of this isn't working in this big room with 20 to 30 kids, but it was a lot of fun, just a lot of trial and error in the beginning, just trying to figure out what it looked like, but kids loved it. I mean, we had a great time. We played games, and we always had, a great turnout. In the beginning, we had a huge amount of volunteers. So it was a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
As you were talking about wanting to mentor kids, and that's kind of why you get into the whole thing. And one of the things that we believe in from birth to college is partnering with parents. I guess I'd be interested to know that how long did you do this, by the way? I should know this, but I don't know the answer.
About 3 years.
3 years, okay. So in the course of that, what did you observe that you could pass on to even parents or that are raising, especially middle school and high school kids? Are there any things that you observe you would say, hey, you should know this about your children as they're going through these ages? I think that would be helpful to all of us that have tried to do that.
Yeah. Teens want to be heard, and they want to be supported by those around them. They want to be loved. And, I think the biggest thing is they want to be heard. They want to know that they can come to you and talk to you about something, and it's not going to be squashed, or you're not going to, blow it out of proportion, or they just want to be heard. They want to know that what they are thinking or feeling, their emotions are real. And to them in that moment, they are real. And so that's probably one thing that I hear the most from my teen girls, is we just want to be heard.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so have you learned the art of not reacting when they say things? Because that's probably what most parents say. Okay, good. So as a parent, develop your poker face, even though your mind's probably blowing off the top of your head. Just try to keep your cool in the face of it might be good.
It's important.
Okay, which is not easy to do as having parented teenagers. Yeah. Oh, really? Is that right? Okay.
My newest addition to my home, Alasia, she's 16. One of the first things she said to me was, Kat, how are you so patient? Like, I've never met someone as patient as you. And I don't know, other than, God's grace, but that was huge to her, is, you roll with it, and you don't react to every little thing that's, brought your way. And there's lots of stuff that comes my way these days. So
sure. Yeah.
Seems like a good time to transition over to telling a little bit about what that means. And tell us a little about you have something that you really know that God's called you towards, even still part of the next generation, but maybe in a different way. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I'm a new foster parent. I've been fostering since officially August of this past year, and I love every minute of it. It's great. I currently have 2 twin babies and a 16-year-old, and I really feel, this really just deep pull to fill my house up. And when I say that and when I think about that, I don't even remember when this was, Brett, but I remember years ago us having a conversation. I don't know what the question was. Again, I'm not sure the context of the conversation, but I remember telling you that if I could have a house full of kids, I would.
Yeah.
And that's been, that was something the Lord laid on my heart years ago. Never, ever did I have any idea that he would feel that desire with foster kids. But he is. And I do. I see more kids. I don't see it just stopping at 3.
Wow.
So,
well, and that gives you probably the prize, not to downgrade anybody that's gone on from our staff before. We've had people go to different things, but you arguably had the coolest reason to to step out, and the most mind blowing. Like, oh, you want to do what? Really? Yeah. Okay. So, and it was to go into fostering full time. Is what it came down to.
What what I realized pretty quickly into the fostering gig was. I don't want to do anything halfway. And I knew that I couldn't run a full-time Next Gen ministry and a full-time fostering ministry and do them both well. And so I knew that I was called to fostering. I had no doubt about that. And so, that's where I landed, and I'm super excited about it.
Well, and it sounds like maybe a simple question, but it's not really meant to be. What is it about fostering? Because some people may look at that and go, wow, that sounds like an immense challenge. And you could even fill in some blanks on maybe some things that we don't know about fostering, because I'm sure everybody has their image and then the reality. But what is it about it that was particularly appealing that made you jump so headlong into it all?
I'll start back kind of at the beginning. I first heard of, I first knew that the Lord was calling me to fostering actually my first week on staff at One Life, which is kind of crazy. We went to a 4 Evansville event. I was there with you, Brett, and Ryan, and there were a couple others there. And they talked about foster care and the harsh realities and the statistics, and how if one household out of however many would become a foster parent, these kids may have a chance. These kids may have a chance in life. And so for me, it was, I want to be that person that shows a child who is in a awful, chaotic, abusive, who knows what situation, that there are people out there that care about them. There are people out there who love them and who want to support them. And so even if they do go back into those homes, because most of the time they do, they'll still know, they'll go back knowing that there is normalcy in the world and there are people who care about them.
Yeah. Well, the other thing I do remember about that fostering thing too, they talked about the harsh realities of the need, but they also talked about the harsh realities of doing it.
Yes.
Because there's this big appeal that it should be done, but they almost try to talk people out of it in order to get them to do it, because to get the right people doing it. So can you fill in a little bit on that? I mean, those harsh realities that you may face?
Yeah, for me, in the beginning, it's the stories, the gut-wrenching stories of what these kids are going through, what these kids are living in and day out. It's rough. Again, I've only been doing this since August, and the stories have been just gut-wrenching. So that, for me, is the hardest part. It's just knowing where these kids have been and what they've gone through. And it just blows my mind.
But then you had twins, and then you did a 16-year-old, and now you want more.
Yeah. So whenever I went into this, I said, "Oh yeah, I'll take any girls, 0 to 5." That was my idea. Well, God had different plans, and He gave me twins, a girl and a boy. They've been with me since August, and they'll probably be with me 3 to 6 more months. They are actually going up for adoption soon. And it's actually pretty cool because there's a family within our One Life family who's interested in adopting them.
Oh, my goodness.
So maybe we'll have more on that some other time.
Yeah, part 2. Here it comes. Yeah. All right, good.
So that's really exciting. And I've been asked the question, how can you let them go? Like, you have, you've cared for them. How can you just let them go? Because I know I'm not called to adopt them. I know that I am called to foster more kids. And if I adopt them, my home would be closed. I would not be able to continue to foster. And so I know that I'm called to the many and not just the few.
Right.
And then the 16-year-old was not my plan at all. I
It's probably not a lot of people's plans,
No,
because that's intimidating to even,
Yes.
biological parents
Right.
to raise their 16-year-old is not easy.
Yes, that was not part of my plan. I received a phone call. Actually, let me back up just a little bit. I had told my worker just a week before that I was feeling called to adopt a 17-year-old that was getting ready to age out of the system, because when kids age out of the system, they're done. They have no one. They have nothing. So if they've been in foster care most of their life, or even just a few years, and they turn 18, they're done. Like, they don't have anyone to call family. They don't have anywhere to call home. And all I could think about was my child. I have a almost 20-year-old in college, and I just could not imagine him not having somewhere to call home.
Yeah.
And it broke my heart. And so as the Lord laid this on my heart, I knew that eventually that would be something that I would get into, is the older kids. So anyway, fast forward a week later, I get a phone call on a Friday night, I think, and hey, we need a weekend placement, just a temporary respite placement. It's for a 17-year-old. Are you interested? Like, yeah, God, of course I'm interested. Anyway, she was 15. She was not 17.
Oh my goodness.
At the time. She's now 16. But anyway, and I can't imagine life without her.
Oh.
We will most definitely be adopting her in the near future.
Wow.
And it's totally a God. I mean,
Right.
that was not my plan. I say that a lot because it wasn't. I give God all the glory for that one, because I would not have said yes to that phone call if they said she was 15.
Wow.
I just wouldn't have.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, I never thought of that before too, that like when you go out into the world, not having a family, because I watch my own kids and they're all of age to be out in the world. But even the fact of having a home, I always had that. I mean, I talked to my mom today, and she's still my mom, even though I'm, 50 something. It's
What was
just
that number?
yeah, it just, but I've had the benefit of that, and you wonder what kind of emotional benefit you take for granted when you have that versus when you don't. You're 18, okay, you're out of the system, now take on the world. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that could be really, really rough and very, very difficult.
Yeah.
So it's amazing you had a sensitivity to that. I love that.
So I have a couple of things that popped in my head. One, so when you foster, do you know how long? Is there a time limit? So it could be...
they could call and say it's a temporary placement that could turn into a lifelong placement like mine, but most of the time they don't know. They say it can be anywhere from 2 days to 2 years, because most kids are in the system about 2 years, and then they go up for adoption. So, yeah, 2 days or 2 years.
And then you mentioned your older son. You have a daughter as well. Well, what's their reaction been to this? Like, how have they responded?
Madeline loves it. My daughter, she's 8, and she loves it. She is such a little mama, and she absolutely loves it. She has a great time. There hasn't been one moment of jealousy that I've seen. Now, that doesn't mean that she hasn't been jealous, but she has held herself really well through this all. Now, I have seen moments of fits through thinking the twins may leave one day. That's going to be the hardest part for her, is when we have kids walk through the door and then they leave, because she loves and cares very deeply for people. And so that's going to be the hardest part for her. And then my son, I'll never forget the day that I told him that I wanted to foster. Of course, I had the conversation with him first before I moved forward, just because I was taking his room. I mean,
oh yeah. By the way,
see ya. I'm glad you're going to college.
When you come home the next time, this, yeah. Okay, yeah.
So I really wanted to have his blessing, and I wanted to sit down and have a conversation with him. And I will never forget. He started crying, and tears came to his eyes, and he was like, "Mom, that's so awesome. Like, that's the best thing ever that you could do." And so knowing that he was that okay with it made it even more of, something I wanted to run straight into.
That's cool.
Yeah.
He's a cool kid.
He's so awesome. Yeah.
So, I mean, really, when you think about, the next few years, you don't know what that looks like at this point, but you know that that this is what you want to do.
Yeah, I have no doubt about it.
When people look at this and they say, Kat, how can we support you? What would you say?
Prayer, obviously. One thing that has been the most amazing thing is I have a Facebook group where I just kind of puke out what's happening and what's going on, and maybe the current needs that I have, and just the support from my community has been amazing. But the most amazing was when the twins came. I mean, it was like having 2 newborn babies in the house. Yeah. They weren't newborn, but that's what it was like. And I was still working here full time, and I had just people showing up and bringing me food and holding a baby so I could go shower, or holding a baby so I could fix my 8-year-old dinner. Just showing up unexpectedly. Like, I don't even care if you tell me you're coming. I'm gonna say, come in when you get there. Because
everybody kept that in mind now.
Yeah. But that's that was the most amazing thing so far. But yeah, just support, just knowing that my community is out there supporting what I'm doing.
Oh, that is incredible. Yeah, I remember when our first child was born, and she was an infant, and my wife and I looked at each other. Can you imagine having 2 of these at once? And there were 2 of us. Wow. So it is. I don't know how you do it. I don't get it, but I love, and everybody can obviously hear that it's driven by a genuine sense of calling and genuine sense of passion. This is not a resentful walk in any way, and that's what's going to sustain you over time. So we hope and pray that you'll keep that joy, and you'll keep that. Just that strength that comes from that through all of it, because it is remarkable the difference that can end up making in a child's life. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. Give them a home. That's amazing. Yep.
Kat, anything else to add? I want to give you an opportunity. Anything else that maybe we didn't touch on, or?
No, I mean, I mentioned, that the calling for fostering happened the first week at One Life. And I truly believe that the Lord took me away from what I believe was my forever job, to One Life, to ministry, because I knew I was called to ministry. So he brought me to One Life to guide me through a journey to fostering. No doubt about that. I would not be where I am today if I did not come to staff at One Life, and just have that freedom to do what I love to do. And yeah, so I give it all, obviously, to God, but I know that was his works, and part of his journey was One Life. So
yeah, I remember the interviews where there was definite, this, I'm just called to this. I just know I am, and it's that's not necessarily how you get a job, but I mean we knew that I had this deep conviction that if I don't do it here, I'm going to do it somewhere.
Yeah,
and that was a real thing, and knowing that it was the stair step into what you're doing now, that your house will be full. That's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, and I think one more thing is, as I felt the Lord calling me to fostering full time. At first I was like, no way could he be calling me out of what he just called me to, because really I haven't been on staff very long, just a couple of years. And so I fought it. I'm like, no, this can't be right. And I felt like if I left One Life, I was going to be being disobedient. And when I finally I'm an internal processor. So I just think all of these things to myself, and I don't tell anyone what I'm thinking. But when I finally sat down with my very best friend, she said, Kat, you've never said that you're called to church ministry. You said you're called to ministry, and fostering is ministry. And so your heart has changed. That's okay. Yeah. So after that conversation, I finally felt a relief of knowing that I wasn't going to be disobedient by leaving the church work, that I was, I'm still doing God's work. It's just in a different way. So
yeah, there's a great lesson in there that ministry, which means service, it can change expressions, and we'll all go through that in one form or the other. Your ministry expression will change over time, whether it's full time at a church or not full time at a church or whatever else. But what I love is that you obviously have just follow the leadership of the Holy Spirit, and He's getting you from one place to the other, and that's how you end up coming to the end of your life saying, hey, I ran the race, and fulfillment's there, and the fruit is there, and the impact is there, and that's how it works. That's how it's supposed to. So proud of you for that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, well, we're definitely going to miss you, and the planning and the conversations and the meetings, even the meetings,
and the Lysol,
and the Lysol, yeah. But man, I mean, I'm so glad that we were able to sit down here. For me, I love hearing this because I knew a little bit about what you're doing, but I haven't got to hear some of this. So hopefully, other people have been blessed by it, as I know I have. So we're excited for you. Excited for hopefully an update, another episode, maybe. Yeah. A little bit down the road. We'll see where things are going, and continue hearing your story and the story of the people coming through your house, which I think is going to be incredible as well. So, Brett, anything to close with?
Well, we are, speaking of ministry, and this coming Sunday, we are going to be doing a connection event. It's going to be a little bit different than maybe people expect, and just some things in our hearts about in this season that our whole church is in. We want to help people find that ministry, but maybe in a little bit different way than you expect. We'll just leave it at that.
A teaser.
A teaser. That's right.
A little teaser. Again, thank you guys so much for listening. You can watch as well. We're on YouTube as well. Anywhere you listen to podcasts. We always appreciate the follow, share, comment. Let us know what you think. Email us podcast@onelifechurch.org, and we'll see you again next time, as we're now in episode 101.
101.
So,
that's right.
We'll see you again next time.